They call it a wedding, but you know better. This is no celebration. The silk is stained with something older than wine. The smiles are stitched onto faces like funeral masks. Somewhere beneath the cathedral's vaulted shadow,
softly.
a girl is marrying a stranger with a dagger under his tongue. The bells ring, yes, but not like joy. They toll like warnings. You do not yet realize you are walking into a cage dressed as a crown. Mary Stuart is 15, but the world already calls her queen. Not in whispers, in signatures, in treaties, in the ink that binds countries together and splits them apart. She has ruled Scotland since she was 6 days old, though ruled is a generous term. Her real kingdom has been the courts of France, its golden tapestries, its venomous smiles, and its lessons in how to survive when survival looks so much like surrender. They dressed her like a saint and trained her like a chess piece. Her uncles, the Guises, are devout Catholics, whispering Latin and ambition in equal measure. In their hands, Mary is both a vessel of divine right and a blade aimed at England's Protestant heart. A queen twice over, once by birth and once by the accident of a cousin's illegitimacy. Elizabeth Tudor watches from across the sea, wary and sharp, her own throne a house of cards that trembles each time Mary breathes too loudly. And now France is marrying her off, to their dauphin, Francis, sickly, soft-eyed, already coughing through the vows. He is 2 inches shorter and twice as fragile. But he is the son of a king, and that makes him something valuable. That makes you something useful. They crown you Queen of France in white, the color of mourning in this country. It is fitting. Behind the veils and brocade lies a child raised not to trust, not to love, but to endure. You have been told you are chosen, anointed, holy. But behind closed doors, you are only ever a bargaining chip, a proxy for your uncle's war against Protestant heresy. You don't yet see the weight of the blood stitched into your wedding dress. The air in the palace thickens with incense and secrets. Catherine de' Medici, your new mother-in-law, watches from behind black eyes, calculating in cold. She says little, but her presence is a silence louder than drums. She knows the wedding is only the beginning. Mary, they whisper, is to be the Catholic hope for all of Britain. A girl child, trained to smile, married to a ghost of a prince, weaponized against her own cousin. But Mary smiles, anyway. She is good at that. She has learned how to hold a pose even as the floor shifts beneath her. She has learned how to kiss death without letting it taste her tongue. Her wedding night passes in whispers and prayers, not passion. Francis is too young, too brittle. They share a bed, but not a future. Still, the crown fits. For now. You should have known then that something was wrong. That wedding's built on politics wrought from within. That love born in a chapel where swords hang on every wall will never bloom, only bleed. Mary becomes Queen of France before she becomes a woman in full. And yet, power does not bring freedom. It brings expectation, control, whispers in dark hallways about heirs and empires. The real marriage is between kingdoms, and Mary is merely the veil. When Francis dies 2 years later, a hemorrhage of the brain, they say, Mary is left standing over his corpse with eyes too dry and hands too clean. The court turns colder. Catherine now wears her widowhood like a crown of her own, and Mary. She is inconvenient. A queen with no king. A threat to every Protestant throne in Europe. The French whisper that she should return to Scotland. Let her rot in the rain. So she goes. The girl who was raised in palaces returns to the land of her birth, where wolves were taught and loyalty is only as strong as your ability to buy it. But something has changed in Mary. The wedding stripped her of illusions. The blood on the altar did not dry. It clung to her skin like prophecy. She does not return meek. Scotland greets her like a battered lover, weathered, suspicious, and cruel in its beauty. Gone are the gold-leafed ceilings and perfumed corridors of the French court. Here, the air tastes of ash and old grudges. Her castles smell of damp stone and distrust. The nobles bow, but their eyes measure her like a sheep to be weighed, not worshipped. Mary is 18 now. A widow. A queen without a consort. And worse, Catholic, in a country that has begun to burn with Protestant fire. John Knox stalks her in sermons, calling her a Jezebel, a harlot, a foreign idol draped in silk and sin. He preaches thunder from the pulpit while Mary, with her French manners and Marian devotion, tries to dance with wolves in tartan cloaks. Every gesture is political. Every smile, a negotiation. Every silence, a trap. But she is clever. You would not survive as long as Mary has without learning to play the long game. She lets Knox rant. She feigns tolerance. She keeps her Catholic Mass private, her letters diplomatic, her gestures soft. But behind her pale hands is a will honed in the snake pits of the Valois court. Still, no queen can rule alone. They tell her she must marry again, not for love, of course. Love is the luxury of servants. For heirs. For alliances. For Scotland. But Mary wants more than a pawn. She wants a king worthy of her. And so comes Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. A tall man. Handsome. With the blood of both Tudor and Stuart in his veins, which makes him dangerously appealing and dangerously arrogant. Elizabeth disapproves, and that's half the reason Mary does it. The other half. Darnley is a threat to Elizabeth, to the Protestants, even to her own claim. He has royal blood and ambition, and for one fleeting moment, he seems to adore her. They marry quickly. And Scotland recoils. Darnley is beautiful, yes, but he is also vain, reckless, and drunk on his new power. He demands the crown matrimonial. He wants to rule, not as consort, but as king in name and right. Mary refuses. And thus begins a slow, sick unraveling. The wedding had been grand. Tapestries flown in. Music that echoed off cathedral stone. They sang of union, of hope. But within weeks, the songs sour. Darnley drinks. He gambles. He vanishes into brothels while Mary carries the weight of governance on her back. Worse, he becomes jealous. Not of other men, but of one in particular. David Rizzio. A foreigner. An Italian musician. Her secretary. Her confidant. Her shadow. He is always there, whispering in her ear, playing courtly politics with a dancer's grace. And perhaps nothing more, but that doesn't matter. Rumors thrive where truth cannot. Darnley wants him gone. And in March of 1566, he does just that. They come for Rizzio during supper. A storm of boots and blades. Darnley is there, eyes glassy with drink, and Mary, 6 months pregnant, watches as they pin Rizzio to the ground and stab him 56 times in front of her. They leave the corpse slumped at her feet. Blood seeps beneath the tapestries. She does not scream. She does not faint. She memorizes every face in the room. And then she smiles again. Darnley thinks he has won. That she will beg. That she will fold. Instead, she outmaneuvers him. Convinces him to flee Edinburgh with her. Wins him back just long enough to survive. It is not love. It is strategy. And Mary, now more than ever, is playing for her life. She gives birth to a son, James, who will one day inherit not only her throne, but England's. A Catholic queen has birthed a Protestant heir. The game shifts again. But Darnley's usefulness has run out. And Mary is learning the cost of mercy. The murder is quiet. There is no grand announcement, no noble duel, no public justice. Just a house, Kirk Field, on the outskirts of Edinburgh, where Darnley lies recovering from illness, guarded and paranoid. Mary visits him by candlelight, says little, leaves with nothing but the sound of her own footsteps in the frost. A final kindness. A final deception. Hours later, the house explodes. And yet Darnley is not killed by fire. His body is found in a garden, unburned, unbroken, strangled. There are no witnesses, only whispers. And though Mary does not light the fuse, her fingerprints are everywhere. Everyone suspects her. Few can prove it. Fewer still dare try. The noblemen who plotted Darnley's death are many. The same lords who toasted him at banquets now drink to his memory in public while pocketing coin in private. But they needed Mary's silence, or at least her blindness. And she gave it to them. Why? Because Darnley made her a widow in every way but name. Because he murdered Rizzio in front of her child. Because Scotland does not reward virtue and its queens, it rewards survival. And survival now demands something darker than diplomacy. The man at the center of it all is James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell. Loud. Violent. Charismatic. A creature of appetite and ambition. He is everything Darnley was not: strong, decisive, ruthless. Mary had trusted him to guard her borders. Now she trusts him to shape her fate. And so, in May of 1567, not 3 months after Darnley's death, Bothwell abducts her on the road. They say she goes willingly. They say she resists. They say she is raped. They say it was a political performance. No one agrees. Not even history. But what is clear, 10 days later, Mary marries him. And this, finally, is the blood-stained wedding. Not the French ceremony in white and gold. Not the courtly union with Darnley. This is the moment the world turns its face from Mary. The crown tilts. The mask slips. And what is revealed underneath is not innocence. It is a mirror. Bothwell is loathed. Mary is questioned. The nobles revolt. Less than a month later, she is imprisoned in Lochleven Castle, miscarrying twins and scratching messages into the stone walls. Her husband flees. Her crown is stripped. Her son, James, is taken and raised Protestant under the guardianship of her enemies. She is 24. The queen who had once ruled 2 countries, who had worn the veil of mourning in Paris and the diadem of ancient Scots, now wanders the corridors of a prison with salt on her cheeks and mud on her hem. She writes letters like lifelines. She prays. She waits. And then, she escapes. It is reckless. It is brilliant. Disguised as a laundress, aided by loyal hands, she slips past her jailers and raises an army. But her people no longer want her. She meets them at Carberry Hill and finds no rescue. Only betrayal. The nobles promise her safe passage if she surrenders. She climbs into their carriage. She never sees freedom again. From Scotland, she flees to England. To her cousin. To Elizabeth. The same cousin she once threatened with her claim. The cousin she never met. The cousin whose throne now trembles at the weight of Mary's presence. A Catholic queen on English soil is not a guest. She is a weapon. A symbol. A spark. Elizabeth imprisons her at once. And there she stays, for 19 years. Time bends in captivity. At first, there is hope. Letters smuggled in the seams of dresses. Ciphers hidden in the margins of psalms. Mary believes she will be rescued, that kings will rise in her name, that her son will send for her, or that Elizabeth, bound by blood and womanhood, will show mercy. But Elizabeth is not a sister. She is a mirror, cracked differently. The two queens never meet. Not once. Their war is fought in ink and spies, in secret courts and poisoned pens. Mary pens long letters in a delicate hand, each one draped in politeness and veiled venom. Elizabeth replies rarely, and never with her own words. Mary is moved from castle to castle, always watched, always feared, always used. She is no longer a monarch, she is a symbol wrapped in velvet. English Catholics whisper that she is the true queen. Plots bloom like mold around her, fed by foreign gold and local despair. Mary knows and does not know. She signs what she should not. She trusts who she must not. Or perhaps she does none of these things. Perhaps she simply breathes, and that is enough to damn her. The Babington plot is the final stroke. A plan to assassinate Elizabeth, place Mary on the throne, restore Catholic rule. The letters are intercepted, allowed, in fact, to reach her under Walsingham's careful eye. The trap is flawless. In one of them, Mary writes, "Let the enterprise go forward," a line that echoes like a sword drawn in the dark. It is enough. Elizabeth hesitates. She does not want Mary's blood on her hands, but she wants her ghost even less. And so, after 19 years of slow erosion, of watching her son raised by those who called her a harlot, of praying behind stone walls that remember more of her than her own child does, Mary is sentenced to die. She is 44. When the moment comes, she dresses deliberately. A satin gown of deep black, a mantle of crimson underneath, martyr's blood, martyr's cloth. Her ladies weep, but Mary does not. She has rehearsed this ending in her prayers. She has seen it in dreams. The blade has followed her since her first wedding kiss. The execution chamber at Fotheringhay Castle is cold, bare, indifferent. Mary walks to the block with dignity, her spine straight beneath years of sorrow. She kneels. She forgives. And then the axe falls. The first blow misses her neck, striking the back of her skull. The second is cleaner. The third severs the last threads of a life spent in chains of silk and iron. When the executioner lifts her head, her hair, once famed for its fire, is a wig. It slips from his hands. The real hair beneath is gray, cropped, shorn by time. A queen unmasked. The dog of one of her ladies darts from beneath her skirts, howling. Elizabeth weeps when she hears. Or so the story goes. Perhaps she weeps for what she has done. Or perhaps for what she has avoided. A mirror, cracked differently. But the world does not weep. It moves on. Mary's body is buried at Peterborough Cathedral, but years later, James, her son, her stolen heir, moves her to Westminster Abbey. Places her opposite Elizabeth, facing her cousin across eternity. They lie there still. Two queens who never met, joined forever in stone and silence. But death is not the end of a queen. Not one like Mary. Long after the axe is cleaned, long after the crimson gown is folded into myth, her story coils in the corners of history like smoke. She is mourned as a martyr in Catholic lands, cursed as a serpent in Protestant ones. Painted, rewritten, betrayed. The truth lies bruised beneath centuries of propaganda and poetry. Was she a victim? You want to say yes. She was married at 15, widowed at 18, hunted by men who feared her beauty more than her politics. She gave birth in a country that hated her for breathing. Her closest friends were slaughtered in front of her. Her name was weaponized before she could sign it in full. But what of the rest? What of the wedding with Bothwell, while Darley's blood still stained the stones? What of the letters she penned in invisible ink, the plots she encouraged with trembling hands and whispered names? What of the silence when it suited her, the fury when it did not? Mary knew the world she lived in. She had seen it devour weaker women. She did not beg. She seduced. She did not run. She maneuvered. And when the crown slipped, she married the man who killed her husband and tried to make a kingdom out of ashes. That is not innocence. That is power, wielded by someone who never learned how to put it down. Perhaps the most haunting truth is not that Mary lost her head, but that she once held the fates of 3 kingdoms in her palm, and still she thought she could love her way through it. You imagine her now, at that final wedding, the blood-stained one, where she bound herself to Bothwell. Was it fear that drove her? Or pride? Or some poisonous cocktail of both? She had survived France. She had survived Rizzio. She had survived childbirth, betrayal, imprisonment. But survival is not the same as victory. And in the end, perhaps the saddest thing is this. She believed her story was a tragedy. That the world had wronged her. That she was born to rule and undone by men. But what if she was never the victim? What if she was the storm? She once held the hopes of Catholic Europe in her jeweled hand. She once made Elizabeth tremble. She once thought herself destined to unite crowns, to birth salvation. But she left behind civil war. A son who never visited her grave. A trail of corpses and suitors who bled her dry. And still, you feel for her. Not because she was good, but because she was almost something greater. Almost wise. Almost just. Almost worthy of the crown that sat on her head like a curse. History does not bury women like Mary easily. It circles them, obsessively, like a dog at a locked door. What if she had lived? What if she had escaped? Would she have returned to Scotland and taken it back by force? Would she have ruled England in Elizabeth's place, Catholic prayers echoing through Westminster? Would there have been more blood? Or would she have been broken, finally, utterly, by time? You wonder this as you walk away from her story. Not because it's over, but because it never really ends.